So my name's Nick. I work for Cal Hydronics. We build these systems at our shop out in Hayward. Our subdivision is Flowtherm right here. Flowtherm is part of California Hydronics. Phone number right here is who you can get in contact if there's any issues, you guys need parts, anything along those lines. So whole purpose of the system. Oh, and by the way, if I speak too quick or if you guys have any questions, just go ahead and stop me. Feel free. Any questions, just go ahead and let me know. But what we're doing here is we're taking city water for whatever pressure we have it coming in at, which you guys are getting about 88 psi, which is normal for the city. The city usually has pretty good pressure. And we are boosting it up to a higher pressure to get it up to the top floors and their domestic hot water system up there and all that. So this is considered a triplex system, which means there's 3 different pumps on here. Most of the time the way they size these is they'll do one pump can handle the whole load and the other 2 are pretty much backups. Most people get duplexes, but if you want to be really safe, you get a triplex, which means you have 2 redundant pumps. You have 2 backups at that point. So right off the bat, you have your main control panel. Main control panel has its main disconnect right here. You flip that main disconnect, it's going to kill power to everything down below. Right here you have your overloads for each individual pump. So if that motor starts drawing too much amps for whatever reason, overload's going to trip. And eventually at some point, if it has a call, you'd end up getting a red alert right here. So each one corresponds to a certain pump. Each overload is set to match that amperage on that pump for whatever voltage you have coming in. So if it's 480, there's a certain amperage at 480 that it corresponds to. So right here you have your HOA switch, handoff auto. We use PLC instead of auto, which can be kind of confusing to some people. But basically it's just hand. So hand mode is just one set speed. When we do startup on these, we set it so if you put it into hand, that one pump should be able to get you about 2 or 3 psi less than what your set point is. Your guys' set point is 85 psi. So say all the drives fail and you guys need pressure, you can flick it into hand, it should put you about 82, 83 psi, so you guys still have pressure up on the top floors.
So just for quick, so the hand doesn't run 100%, it still runs?
The hand runs it at a set speed. So when we come to do startup, we find out what percentage of the drive gets you a couple psi less than what you guys want. And so we input that on every single pump for the hand speed. So, so yeah, flicking into hand, it's going to get you about 82, 83, somewhere in that range. So, like I said, handoff auto for all 3. You have your out of service light, so if something ended up happening, that out of service light is going to be lit like so. Okay. General fault, so something happens, you're going to get that general fault light. So say somebody walks by and breaks this transducer right there. You're going to get a general fault. What's nice about these panels is they have all sorts of alarms and safeties and stuff to make sure that if something happens, it will shut itself down or do whatever the alarm that happens. It knows there's certain things that happen when that alarm happens. So if it's a high suction alarm, it'll make sure to turn off the pump so you don't overpressurize anything else further down the line. So certain alarms do certain things. To back it up, you have a transducer on your discharge and your suction piping. So what those transducers are doing is they are sending a pressure signal back to the control panel. And so your pressure on your suction is 85 and your system is 85. And your set point's 85. So technically, this booster is not doing much. I'm assuming this booster, the only purpose of this booster is that if the city water drops pretty low, like maybe 60 and you guys still want 85, that's when these pumps are going to come on. Most places, they have a set point higher than that. They'd say they want 150 as a set point. So then these pumps will be running all the time. But you guys just pretty much are using it as a backup in case city water drops down to a lower pressure, which is cool. That's good.
And if we lose city water and we go to our reserve, it probably definitely take it then as well.
Yes, exactly.
So right now you tell us what is the pressure on the city water, right?
City water, yeah, is 85 psi. And you also have a gauge on there that's going to tell you the same thing. And so, just to kind of jump ahead, part of your guys' maintenance, I guess you could say preventative maintenance, or just one of your checks is you want to come by every year or so and look at your gauge. So you got your discharge gauge right here. All right, so my discharge gauge says 85 PSI. Make sure you have 85 PSI. So pretty much you're checking that transducer is reading correctly by using the gauge to check it. It's kind of hard in this scenario because everything is 85. Suction's 85, discharge is 85, set point's 85, so it's kind of hard. But say the discharge pressure you had 125 in the building, then you would be able to look at that gauge. Okay, this says 125, that says 125. Transducer's working correctly and everything's operating per specification. So more on the panel. Like I said, you have your disconnect, you have your screws to open the door. Right here it says system normal, and I think that's the gentleman that's also going to be in this training. Sorry, one second. This is Nick. That's going to light up red. It's kind of hard for me to create an alarm right now. We have the pumps aren't on, so there's not a lot of ways I can really show you guys, but like I said, it's going to light up red right here, and it'll let you know, hey, there's something going on. You're also going to get this lit up. So that'll let you guys know some sort of action needs to be taken, something needs to be looked into, troubleshooting might need to happen. There's also a history, so if you hit the bottom corner where it says normal, hit that little thing. So that was the last high system pressure, so that's part of our testing. So I'll clear that, so the next time you guys come up here, if there is an alarm, you know that it's recent. So that's how you get to that. So if you guys ever have to do a change of set point or change certain little things, you guys have access to level 1. No one wrote it on the outside of the panel, but the first level password, which you guys have access to, is 9876. It also says it in the blue book inside of our panel, but what that's going to get you, 9876, it's going to get you access to some of the parameters to change. Certain parameters we don't want you guys to change unless we're here, just to make sure that nothing gets changed and causes problems. But what that's going to do is that it's going to give you access to your set points. So say you guys, a year from now decide, okay, we need 90 PSI at the roof, okay? You click that, change that to 90, and then you would do your start pressure 5 PSI below that. So if I brought this to 90, I'd bring this to 85. And you guys most likely will never have to do that, but that's just, we always want to show that. Also, another thing on here is going to be your water temperature, which is nice. This booster has a parameter on there so that if the water temperature in this booster goes over 100 degrees, everything shuts down. Purpose is so, say this thing was just running and for some reason it was just deadheading and the water inside the loop just started heating up due to friction. There's no flow, but we're just still pumping. It's just getting hotter and hotter. To protect the seals on those pumps, this booster is going to start shutting off at 100 degrees, and it'll start, alerting people, hey, something needs to happen. We need to take a look at this. So that's pretty much it for the panel. We do have an intake and an outtake, or an exhaust or an intake, to pretty much cool down the panel. The fans kick on at 90 degrees inside of here. So this would be your intake. The intake does have a filter on there. So every once in a while, especially after construction happened, it might be a good thing to pull that filter out and maybe replace it in a couple months. Every time after construction, you get construction dust and it fills up, and you don't want to restrict flow through here because then you start overheating these electrical components and it's downhill from there. So,
do you know offhand what size that filter is?
I don't off the top of my head. Every panel's different. All our different panel sizes, so they're all kind of custom. So what you do,
screwdriver?
Yep. So I'm going to turn the booster off for a second. So pull out these Molex plugs. You're going to pop off this bad boy right here, these little tabs, and it's right behind there. So this covers with the phone? Not. Oh yeah, it does. I'm not gonna have to change one first, but ooh, that one does probably need to get changed. So construction dust.
Get a picture of that, Ricky. Which side? Here, I got the pin on here. Which side you got there? So you're on the side.
quarter thick by probably 8. Yeah.
So it's actually 8
8.5.
and a quarter. It's like 8.5 by 8.5 would be the nominal, or and then the.
And there is a flow direction, as most filters are. So I'm glad we pulled that out. Now we know that it probably should be changed. Ooh, man, that's a good one. Wow, the damn construction dust gets you every time.
Now you got something to do, Richard. You come in and clean all the dust off the pump line.
Instead of there.
Looks like there's a filter right there too.
It's dirty, you know.
They've already cleaned this room though.
Well, they gotta do it again.
Did you check your flow direction?
Not to close that way.
Alright, there you go. Very good.
So just to note, there's 2 filters, right? There's a filter on there too.
No, it's just on your intake.
But I mean, I see it right there.
There is a filter in this line as well.
That's a first. Interesting. Okay. I don't know why. They must have used the same one on the intake and outtake, because usually there's never one on the exhaust.
It's
Because
the same grill.
yeah, well, you're pulling in and you're pushing out, so why
Right.
would you need a second
Exactly,
bed? Yeah, I guess you guys have 2.
Well, if it's standalone, when the fan's not running, air could be circulating the other direction.
That's true. But like I said, from the past, usually you never see that. So yeah, whatever. So you guys have 2 in there, so keep that in mind. Order 2, have 2 on hand. Dirty filter, dirty air coming in.
Like all this dust in there.
So while I have it open, you have your VFDs right here. They're made by Schneider Electric. These are your overloads that are in accordance with the amperage on those motors. This is your main disconnect. You got branch off, you got transformers, temperature setting for your fan, a little terminal block for your transducers and temperature sensors and all that good old stuff. And this is your PLC right here. This is back your PLC with all your switches and such. Blue manual. This is that IO&M I was talking about. We always keep it in there, but if you guys want to keep it in the engineering office, you can do that too. And wiring diagram for troubleshooting, anything like that. So very helpful if you're trying to troubleshoot. Get it?
Can you get somebody at the factory out here to show us how?
Pumps, they have numerous impellers inside of there. The whole point of having numerous impellers is it's more efficient. These are high head pumps, which means they can put off a lot of pressure and a lot of flow. These are great pumps. What's good about them is that the motor is vertical like that. It's really good on getting the heat off of the motor, so the motors tend to last a lot longer than pumps like so that are mounted horizontally like that one. And they're really, really efficient. So the way they work is you have a wet end down here, which is where your whole volute is, or excuse me, all your impellers. And right here you have your motor. You have 2 shafts in the center right here with a coupling in the center. There's no need for alignment on the 2 shafts. They're held together in the center, and there's no need to sit there with a straight edge and try to align them up, which is very nice. The coupling is just a piece of pretty much 2 cast iron little pieces that go together with 4 bolts. So that's the pump. You do have a drain right here if you guys ever need to drain it off. And you have 2 isolation valves on the in and the out on both sides of the pump for service. There is a check valve right here, so if you guys are ever having issues with equalizing suction to discharge, that check valve might be stuck open and might need to be pulled apart and cleaned out. And again, you would just isolate it on the 2 valves, and you would actually isolate it down here also. What that is, we call that the no-flow header, or the no-flow manifold. That's part of that temperature sensor that I was talking about earlier. That's what that blue head is, so that's that temperature sensor. And what it's doing, the reason it's all piped, it has all these tubings, is it's taking the hottest water from where that seal is, which is what we're trying to protect, and it's taking that hot water and it's sending it right to that sensor, and it's doing that from every single pump. So the hottest water is going right to the sensor, and the panel's looking at it and it's saying, oh, okay, as long as you're under 100 degrees, we're good. Oh, you're over 100? All right, I need to start shutting things down before we start ruining seals. And like I said, there is a seal, mechanical seal inside of there. It's very easy to change. You don't have to take this off. You just take this cover off, 4 bolts, pull it up, slide a new one on, very simple. Right here you have a temperature and pressure relief valve. Temperature 130, pressure 300. So each one is piped individually. Well, each one is piped into this manifold right here and exits right here. So all those, that's your extra protection on top of that temperature sensor. Those are another protection device to make sure that you don't put too much temperature on those seals, but it also does pressure. So if you ever hit 300 PSI, which these pumps are rated for, well, that's their max pressure, that thing will go off and go to a drain. Or, you know, there's a drain somewhere around here, so. Let's see, what else do we have?
Looks like right now it shoots down the chute.
I'm looking at it.
I just curious where it was.
There's one over there.
So,
This piece here right there, that's the check right there?
yes, sir, that is a check valve, that's correct. And what's funny is they put the nameplate on there, but it's kind of deceiving because it's kind of facing that way, so everybody thinks, is it backwards? And it's like, no, because you would think the nameplate would be kind of facing the direction of flow, but it's correct. They also have an arrow on the, where they got it? On the bottom that shows the direction of flow. So if you guys ever have to take that out, just make sure the direction of flow is correct.
How come the arrow
So
on the
that was
base?
the next thing.
Yeah.
So it's
One way
very
right to
deceiving.
left.
It's very deceiving. Top arrow, rotation.
Okay.
Okay.
Bottom, flow.
Okay.
So if you look on the other side,
And then the sticker right there?
yeah, I know. We'll see if that's, like it
That's
says,
rotation.
rotation.
Too, they got
Okay.
all the frickin' water flows.
But if you look at the other side of this pump, they're both the same. They're going in the same direction, but just on this side, they're opposite. So we have guys pipe these things backwards all the time, and we just always tell them, you just make
So
sure.
what about
No,
these stickers
you know
right
what?
here?
Yeah, the flows this
I don't
side.
have anything to do
Oh,
with
okay.
The stickers are wrong.
Yeah, I don't have anything to do with those. I don't
Yeah,
want to
the
step
stickers
on
are wrong.
toes. So.
This one is.
So because if
And
you
this
use
one
No,
is.
the
water
water
tanks on the roof and we're bypassing the city main, it's actually coming down and it's going in.
And then there's
in
another
that way.
sticker on the
But
side.
normally, oh no, you're still fucked up.
Yeah, the arrows are fucked up, like for
Yeah,
sure.
something's not right here.
This is- yeah, this is the fucked up one.
Okay, so this is wrong,
This one.
and that's wrong.
That one's wrong also.
Okay.
Is the rotation.
It can be either because it's a bypass of the pump from the city or from the, so if you isolate your pump, see, same with those could be either way.
Hey, look, this does a U-turn, it goes up and then it comes back this way, and then the arrows are going in the same opposite.
Yes, so it's part of the emergency bypass system. This could actually be, go both directions. So if you isolated out this skid, if you isolate this skid out, that pipe right there is to your emergency water tanks. That
Right,
one,
right.
Right,
That
right.
comes
That's
down.
So
right.
that would
yeah.
come down, and it goes through that,
And then it goes back up.
Yes.
But what
that
about this one? This one's
That
backwards.
one's backwards.
Yeah,
That one's backwards.
These two, basically only those two. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Those two are backwards.
Just
That
wanna make
one-
sure I
That
understand.
one up there. is
That one's
backwards.
correct, yeah, I get that.
Fails. All the serial number and information on all these pumps is on this sticker. It's on this side over here on each one of these pumps. Serial number is going to be the little bottom one with the barcode, and part number is going to be, or catalog number they call it, is going to be that number right there. So that corresponds to the wet end or the pump end. Nameplate right here corresponds to the motor. So this is a Baldor motor. It gives you horsepower, inboard and outboard bearings in case those ever need to be changed, and all the information that you could possibly need for that. These motors do have Zerk fittings. You have your inboard and you have your outboard. I always suggest, well, first off, you want to get the manual from there and find out what type of grease that Baldor specs now. They've been changing a little bit recently, so I've been not to tell people which type because it has been changing. So get your manual, and whatever the manual says that came with these, do exactly that. I'm assuming it's Polyrex Blue EM, but like I said, I'm not quite sure. But grease it depending on runtime. There should be a chart in there. It all depends on how much the pump runs and the environment that the pump's in. And that dictates how often you grease. So if you're in a really dry environment, the thing's running 24/7, you're gonna grease a lot more than if the thing runs a couple hours a day or runs never and it's in a very, not dry environment, just a normal environment. So most of the time, once a year, a couple of pumps of grease, inboard, outboard, should be good enough, or just, you know, let it go until it starts squealing a little bit, do a couple pumps and go that way. The wet end, there's no greasing, there's no nothing. It's self-lubricating via the water. One thing also, if you ever do any work, there's an air vent right here on this backside. It's just via compression. So there's no, you just kind of loosen the little packing nut on there, get all the air out and tighten it back in. There's no pipe dope or tape or anything needed. So say I do work on this bad boy, put the water back on, I'm going to open that air vent, let it spray out until it's pure water and it's not burping, tighten it back up, and you're good to go. Let's see, what else we got? Let's see, final thing would be, you have your nameplate right there, so that nameplate is almost like our serial number, it's like our model number, is that part, 70BS-03, 03 being 3 pumps, and the FAB 15-149. Like I said, that is our serial number, so if you ever needed something, you would call McClanahan first, McClanahan would get a hold of us, and you would tell them I have a FAB 15-149 and I need this and this for this and that. So, other than that, I don't think there's anything else. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, definitely. What's that little brass piece right there?
This bad boy?
That's the pressure.
That's your temperature and pressure relief valve. So, temperature 130, it'll pop at, and pressure 300 psi.
So is that tubing that's just to the drain, or that's like a measurement?
This tubing is the one that goes to the temperature sensor, and this is the outlet of that relief valve, so if it ever pops, they all kind of link together and then they go out of that pin right there.
So that's kind of like a telltale
if you see that thing squirting out, that relief valve popped or failed, but I haven't seen one fail yet, but it is possible. Anything mechanically fail.
What does that do? The one
What's
that just turned?
This bad boy? It's a valve. It's a ball valve, or a needle valve, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's very, very tiny little port, little needle valve. It's good for gauges because, you know, you don't want a lot of flow going through there. So just a little tiny little pinhole, and that gives you, so say someone breaks this gauge, just close it, tighten it off, change your gauge, open it back up. I always just open them all the way up and then do like a quarter turn back. That's what I always check. And I think that's it. Unless you guys have anything else for me? Cool. On to the next. You know, I've never had to buy one. I'm assuming you can get it from Depot.
Not those.
No?
No, those are special filters.
Okay, so there is, I know, filter manufacturers and filter companies that specify just in filters. Yeah. Dimensions, and I'm sure it'll be. Okay, so.
We don't have to use the exact filter.
No, we can put anything in there. Just if we don't use a high efficiency pleat.
Like I said, these are maintenance-free pumps. There's no grease fittings. There's no nothing. So it makes it very nice. The only thing that can fail is the mechanical seal. So once you have your balloon on that end and your motor on that end, in between you have the bearing assembly. On that bearing assembly, there's a mechanical seal, and where there's a little poke hole. So if you start seeing water come out of that little poke hole, that's when you know that seal has failed. That hole's there for that reason. So that water will start filling up in there, it'll start pouring out of that hole. You'll probably have a little puddle right here. Seal failed. Pull that whole bad boy off. Call Cal Hydro or McClanahan, depending on, you know, when the warranty's up. If the warranty's already up with McClanahan, you can call Cal Hydro direct. But if not, they always want you to call them first and then they can call us. So if that ever happens, it's going to come right out of that hole. It's really all you guys ever have to worry about. There's not much to these. I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So you have your conduit connections or your electrical connections on the end, right where that tag name is, where the tag plate is. So if you guys ever had to do unwiring or anything like that, you would just take off that little back cover, and that's pretty much it.
Be a good idea to blow them out every once in a while.
That's what I was going to say next is like, I mean, it's domestic water. The water's pretty clean out here. But I mean, every few years, if you start having issues with flow and pressure and water's not moving quick enough, you might want to pull that thing apart and you know, pretty much verify that everything's clean in there. Maybe clean it out, take a screwdriver, scrape off any debris or any, you know, calcium or anything like that, and you know, reinstall, and it should be good. So I mean, you are going to build up crud every once in a while over time. So it's good to every once in a while just go through and clean it out so the motor doesn't get stressed. And you know, you start stressing out the motor, it's not going to live as long. So it's good to keep that thing nice and clear and no obstruction and no stress on that motor. So nameplate is that little bad boy right there. That's for the whole pump itself. And the motor also has a sticker that's going to be located on the top. So that'll give you all the motor information for whatever. And then the pump nameplate will give you all like the impeller size and the serial number, model number, and all that kind of stuff. Always good for when you need to order parts. Grab that information, call who you need to call, and give them that info, and they'll get you whatever you guys need. So, and also, one thing I always suggest is what's nice is kind of have your gauges on there for you guys. So get your differential right now, write it down. You know, wait 2 years, and that differential starts to change, and it gets lower. It's probably getting clogged up. Then you probably are starting to get debris in there, and it's probably time to pull. So just remember your delta across there, your delta P, and report it. And you start getting less of a delta, things are starting to get clogged up. So on that, there's no maintenance. So
Is there a coupling on these, or is it direct?
I'm gonna think on these bad boys. Yes, there is a coupling. It's called a Woods coupling. So it's like a little black spider looking one. So it's two little hubs and it has a little insert in the center. So what you do is when you pull that thing apart, first off on the top, in between that motor and the volute, there's like a little metal plate that comes out, and that's where you can see your coupling. Pretty much, if you ever take it apart, you just want to make sure that the little hubs are the same distance on the shafts from when you take them off to put them back on. So say you put it on, the hub on closer to the motor, when you put it back together, that insert in the center is going to be bouncing back and forth, and it could come out, and then you're not doing anything. You're screwed. So just make sure your distances are the same, and you have that insert in the center nice and sandwiched.
What's the general life expectancy of these couplings?
The couplings? Well, with these, since there's no alignment, they're usually pretty good. They can't go out of alignment, and you know, like with those 1510s, eventually they'll kind of, you know, they'll work themselves out of alignment, and then it'll start tearing up those inserts. With these, they're locked in, so they'll last for a good amount of time. I can't really give you an amount of time, but I'd say 10 years. But yeah, these are pretty simple pumps. You guys hopefully will never have to touch them until you have to replace them. Any questions? And I don't know what's controlling these. That's not my scope, but assuming, I think they said it was just straight across the line, so it's not on a VFD, so it's just on off. I'm assuming it's on some sort of heat timer. So there's a sensor somewhere. Oh yeah, there's two switches right there. I'm assuming there's a sensor somewhere that senses a drop in temperature in the loop, kicks those pumps on, gets that temperature back up, and then they shut back off. So
These are recirculation pumps, right?
correct. I just heard one of them turn off, so it must satisfy the temperature. So they're not on all the time, which that's good. It's done correctly. Cool. Subsystem?
Where the water come from?
I don't know.
Okay, so these are considered Weil systems. So Weil is the manufacturer of the pump and the control panel. Pretty much what you're doing is it's a duplex system. So it's two pumps in a pit, and you have 4 floats in there, and depending on which float's made, a certain sequence happens. The bottom float is pretty much just the on. So nothing happens, but the panel is energized in a way. First float, or the second float up makes, pump 1 comes on. There is a lead lag sequence, so they switch back and forth every time, so each pump will have equal run time. And if one pump can't hold the load, the other pump will come on at the same time also. But sequence is, first float comes up, nothing happens. Second float makes, pump 1 comes on. Say the pit keeps filling up, pump 1 can't handle it. Water keeps rising, pump 2, or the third float from the bottom makes. That second pump's gonna come on. So those pumps are both gonna be pumping it down. Hopefully they can pump everything down and the pit, gets empty, and the pumps will keep going all the way till that bottom float breaks, and then everything shuts off. So say there's an emergency and it fills all the way up to that high water float, the top float, the 4th float from the bottom. That's pretty much, that's your high water, and what it's gonna do, it's gonna give you a alarm. This has a red light on top, so it'll give you a loud buzzer, and it'll light, it'll flash. This one doesn't have that. For some reason they ordered 2 different types of panels, I don't know why. So if one of these hits that float, something's wrong. Maybe both pumps failed, I highly doubt it, but something's happening if you're hitting that high water. That pit's filling up way too much. But again, that's gonna be the noise you guys are gonna hear if that high water trips. Say you come here and you see that lit up, or this lit up, or that one, or this one. So this is for overload, so that's over amperage, something got stuck in the pump or something happened, pump's drawing too much amps, that'll be lit up. That's for your over temperature, so somehow the water gets too hot, pump's deadheading, not shutting off, heating up, protects the seal, that thing goes off. Moisture sensor, so moisture sensor is located on the inside of the pump, and pretty much it's where the seal's located. So pretty much if water gets in that internal seal to protect the motor, that moisture sensor is going to trip, and it's going to allow that pump not to turn on. Another one of the safeties, just to make sure you don't completely ruin that motor. Main disconnect panel right here, control light on, and every once in a while if you want to test, it's like the booster, you have hand off auto. They say test off auto, but if you want to test it, just flick it to the left, and if you want to turn both pumps off, have it up, or you can have it in auto. Say you have a high water alarm, if you want to silence it, you can just do that. All the information for the panels are right here. And let's see what else is there. So, I mean, it's super basic. You have 4 floats, like I said, 2 pumps. They're gonna switch back and forth, so the pit's gonna fill up. First float makes, nothing happens. Second float makes, a pump comes on, pumps it down. Second float's gonna break, or it's gonna keep pumping, and then the first float will break, and then it'll shut off. Pretty much like inside of this one, like I said, these 2 panels are different. So this one doesn't have a sequencer inside, so it doesn't tell you what floats are made and what aren't. This one does. So what's going to happen is that pit's going to fill up. You'll see auxiliary off and off make. Okay, so these will light up. Nothing's going to happen. As soon as this one lights up, the lead pump will kick on, and he'll keep pumping. You'll see him disappear. It'll keep pumping until these break, and then the pump will shut off. But pretty much this is just a status alarm, the status bar of what's happening in terms of that pit. This bad boy, like I said, does not have that. Inside the panel, this is in regards to the moisture sensor. You just have little devices in here, transformer, main disconnect, and you have your overloads right here for each pump, just like that other pressure booster panel. You have your starters, and each starter corresponds to a certain pump. Super basic. Wiring diagram is located right here for troubleshooting. If you guys ever have to troubleshoot, there you go. Also more information on the pump and the system. This one only has the panel sticker. This one's going to give you the pump information also. And run hours, which is nice. At least you guys get to know how often that pump runs, or how much it's ran, I should say. That one doesn't have that. So again, super basic. 2 pumps, floats. Float makes, pump comes on. Float breaks, pump shuts off. Any questions?
The over temp, would that happen if the case like a float valve sticks and the pump continues to run and there's no more water in the sump?
Correct.
So it would kick at that point as well.
Correct. because you're just sitting there running dry, getting hot. The way those motors are cooled down is via the water in that pit. And the one thing about those pumps is that you always want to keep that volute submerged. And the purpose is so say you sit here and you just hold this thing in test mode and you let it just freaking drain down as far as it'll go. And it gets air in that volute. The pumps can't pump air. So these guys, I already know, I was here during the startup of this one and I just did the startup of that one today. They've drilled holes in the discharge piping so that you can get that air out. Sometimes it doesn't come out, and what happens is if you pump it down too far, they'll have trouble. Once the pit fills up again, they'll have trouble pumping out. You'll have to sometimes, you know, turn them on and then throttle the discharge valve a couple times, or bring them out, turn them on, and then put them in the water while they're running to try to get that air kicked out. It's kind of a pain sometimes. So just make sure you guys don't just leave them in auto, and if it doesn't have a call, don't run them dry. Do not run them dry, because again, you'll trip moisture temperature sensors, and it's very bad for the pit. You'll burn seals. It's just bad all the way around. So if you're going to do any sort of test on the pumps, make sure that pit is filled and it has water in it so that it can, you know, the pumps aren't running dry and overheating or anything like that. Again, main disconnect. This one has the false door, which you would just open up with those tabs. And this one has the LED light on top, or the light on top, which will let you know. And the alarm silence on this one is located on the left side. So you guys get some sort of alarm and it's beeping in your face and you're trying to troubleshoot and you want it to shut up, you would just hold that button down, it'll quiet it up, and you can complete your troubleshooting with the panel still on, so you can try to find out what happened.
Do they got any reset?
In terms of what? Like a reset on the whole system itself? I mean, yeah, you can cycle power, but if you get an alarm
limits or anything in there that have automatic or manual resets?
It'll trip, and then you have to manually reset it. So yes.
Like that, it's like a reset.
Correct.
Okay.
So I'm freaking pulling way too much. I pull over, we have it set at like 8 amps, okay? So I pull fucking like 15 or something like that. I trip, all right? It's gonna let me know. It's gonna let me know on the front too. So someone's gonna have to come and reset it. But if it tripped, there's something else that needs to be looked at. The further investigation needs to be taken.
What about on the, leave that open that up again, where the indicators for the pump running, I see there's a test button on the left there.
Yes, sir.
What are those all about?
So, say pump 2 is, you guys have to send that back somewhere. You're getting it worked on or something like that. And you don't want to do the lead lag function because you only have one pump in the sequence. Okay. So load 2 would be pump 2, load 1 would be pump 1. Okay. And the center would be auto. Right now it's auto because it's jumping around between both. But I only have pump 1 now because pump 2's gone. Put it in load 1, pump 1. This one, so if you hit high water float, this one will trip also, and that will be your clear.
Okay.
Actually, that resets the post too.
That's a test running that pump, it sounds like.
That is test running that pump.
Actually, it's testing lead lag, because I saw motor 1 run, then motor 2 run.
That's correct, yeah, you are correct. So, if you ever have to do that, but I know that if you do trip your high water sometimes, you do have to reset it here also.
Does that say test and clear?
Test and clear.
Okay.
So it's also a clear and alarm. Correct.
Perfect.
Don't mess with that. That's your sensitivity of your moisture sensor. So that's your ohms. Turn it to 10. It's going to obviously trip. It's used to, I think, 100 ohms is what they have that sensor at. So
can you point to that again and say, "Don't mess with that"?
Don't touch that.
Important things to know, you know.
Pretty much don't touch anything. The way I have it set up right now, don't touch it unless it's yelling at you, making this noise.
Right.
So.
Is that alarm tied to the BMS?
I don't think they tied it into the BMS. I think that's what these ports are for. Yes, they are. It's yellow wiring, which usually means alarm. So no, we are not tied into it. I think it's a dry contact, so it can be done in the future if you guys want to do that. So we'd go into alarm, dry contact would close on these things, and it would send a dry contact closure to your BMS. So no, it is not set up, but it can be done.
What does it mean a dry contact? That's just like on off?
Dry contact, it's like it's pretty much you have a wire and pretty much it's either open or closed. And so
There's no power to it.
there's no, I mean, it's very little. It's a tiny bit. That's what I've explained. It's like a millivolt or something like that. It's a very small amount of voltage, but it pretty much, it closes and then it lets you know something's going on.
Okay.
So it's usually open, and then if there's an alarm, it'll close, and that completes a circuit, and then it'll let you know something's not right. I'm not an electrician, but that's kind of what I've been explained, so you might want to look that up to get a better definition.
And does the panels coincide with which pit? So the left
Correct.
panel, left pit?
This one, that one is that one.
Right.
So left is sewer, right is water.
Groundwater, correct. Yeah.
Groundwater.
Yeah.
And if we have to work on the pump, is that so that's a confined space? Entry?
Correct. We're not allowed to go in there. That's so
Okay.
anytime we go to do startup, we can't go in either because it's part of confined space certification. You have to have the whole training and all that kind of stuff. A couple people there. You got to have the rack that these guys have set up, CO2 meters and all that good stuff.
Yeah,
So.
you gotta have the
Usually-
blower, fresh air, you gotta have your O2 sensor, and you gotta have your retrieval harness and a competent person that's also trained.
Okay. Do we have to label it and stuff? Or is there labels under the...
What do you have as far as on top of this lid? Is that what you're
Yeah,
asking?
then it's like confined space.
Oh, I don't know the requirement on that.
But they both are, right?
Yes, they're both considered confined space.
And the left one is sewer?
Yes.
The right is groundwater?
Correct.
Okay.
Not even think about it. Go inside right there.
No, he's just making sure we don't go in there. That's what he's trying to do.
Dave, you don't think about it.
Do you know what levels are the pumps at?
I just threw that paper out. The floats?
Just curious.
Is that what you're talking
Well,
about?
floats and pumps. Yeah, basically the floats then, yeah.
Yeah, the floats.
It was like 20, 24, 30, and 36 or something along those lines.
Yeah, they're both the same.
Okay.
Yeah. Pumps are raised up, I think, an inch or two. But either way, they're per the manufacturer. And the whole thing is, as long as when the pumps shut off, the lowest point, that balloon is still submerged, that's all we care about. We just want to make sure the water's
It's not
pretty much
dry.
right at the bottom of
Yeah.
that motor. Exactly. I think it's ready.
Pump on's at 24. Pump 2 comes on at 30. And high water alarm is at 3 feet.
Cool.
That's where those are set now.
One of those electrical wires.
Is that blue thing, right?
Yeah. The same thing like in the pump room, that big blue one, except
Right.
this one has a chain wheel.
But somebody has to go down there, or?
Well, there's
No,
the
you got the
chain.
chain
The
right
chain?
there.
Okay.
And then those two cables are for lifting the pumps out. The pumps are on a rail system. You're gonna need the whole lid off to get the French stuff.
And just curious, the pit's like completely sealed, right? Like if it fills up entirely with water.
You'll see the black waterproofing down there. That's as high as.
Okay.
The sewer one is waterproofed all the way up.
Okay.
No, that's just gonna be just to make sure.